All right, so to review the cardio unit, your test is going to be 25% going over blood typing, anemias, doping, and bruising, 25% erythropoiesis, 25% heart anatomy, and 25% survival is sickest, the intro and chapter 1. So let's quickly go over blood components. Remember, red blood cells are erythrocytes, white blood cells leukocytes, platelets are thrombocytes. They help clot your blood. And also you have plasma, which is mostly water, but it also has substances like antibodies that are in it. When you're looking at your blood typing, your blood type is determined by what proteins are on the outside or a cell surface of the erythrocyte. For example, if the proteins you have sticking off are A and Rh, then that is your blood type. We would call you A positive because you have A and you have Rh. That is your antigen. Those are your antigens. That's what identifies your cells. An antibody is what you're an immune cell made by an immune cell to fight things that don't belong in the body. So the same person that has A positive erythrocytes in their blood, but in the plasma, they're going to have antibodies for B because B would not belong in their body. And if it did get in, then their body would want to fight it because it doesn't belong. Remember, with your blood types, anyone can receive O negative. A blood type that's positive can only be given to someone that is positive. So if someone is A positive, they could donate to A positive or AB positive. That's it. If someone is AB positive, they can only donate to AB positive patients. And if your patient is negative, Rh negative, they're going to, a pregnant patient, they're going to need to receive a RhoGAM shot to suppress their Rh antibodies so it doesn't attack the baby. Let's see, bruising. Remember the levels of bruises. It starts with red, which is hemoglobin with oxygen. Then it's purple, which is hemoglobin without oxygen. Then it's biliverdin, which is green. And that's when healing begins. When a bruise is green, that means it's healing. When it turns yellow, that is bilirubin. And then finally, brown, which is also bilirubin. Then it gets broken down to bile, which turns into stool and is secreted through the large intestine, the descending colon, which is in the left lower quadrant. Anemias, the three we learned are iron deficiency anemia. That's going to be when someone is losing too much iron, like they're losing blood, or they're not getting enough iron in their diet, or they're not absorbing it. Maybe they're drinking a lot of caffeine and the caffeine is blocking absorption of iron. Pernicious anemia is when they don't have vitamin B12. Remember, B12 is needed for erythropoietin to bind to the stem cell in the bone marrow to make a red blood cell. So their issue might not be that they're not getting B12 in their diet, but that they're not getting protein. Remember, when you eat protein, we turn it into intrinsic factor, which helps us absorb B12 into the bloodstream. And the third type of anemia is sickle cell anemia. That is a genetic mutation where their blood cells, when they're hypoxic or stressed, they sickle. So they're not round and nice and round and fluffy. They're sickled, sharp like little knives. And that conferred resistance against malaria. So the little protist that causes malaria can hitch a ride in a nice fluffy round erythrocyte, but it can't hitch a ride on a sickled one. So people would survive long enough in order to survive malaria and pass on the gene, although they might ultimately die from sickle cell. And that's why that gene stayed in the population. Let's see. Let's go through doping. The three types of doping are getting a erythropoietin injection, which is going to stimulate erythropoiesis. Tricking the body into thinking it's hypoxic by exercising with a mask or exercising at high altitude, and also a transfusion, a blood transfusion, either from donated blood or from your own blood or the athlete's own blood, the risk of that is muddy blood. So having too much blood in the vessels is not going to flow, and it's deadly. All right, erythropoiesis. Let's go through erythropoiesis. Anytime you're thinking about the liver, remember your liver is in your right upper quadrant, it's going to be involved with iron. I want you to think iron. So it makes a hormone called hepcidin. Hepcidin is going to hide the iron in your macrophages, and that prevents the bacteria from getting to it. Iron makes bacteria divide and grow out of control, so our body wants to hide it. And actually, when we're sick, our body upregulates or increases hepcidin so that the iron is even more locked down because our defenses have been breached. We have bacteria in us, and we don't want them eating our iron. It also is going to have lots of transferrin that's going to transfer the iron over to your red bone marrow to go to be made into hemoglobin. Remember, hemoglobin is in erythrocytes. In each hemoglobin needs 4 molecules of iron. And it also has a protein called high iron. High iron is going to block the effects of hepcidin to free up iron into the blood when we need it to make red blood cells. And people that have a mutation in high iron have a disease called hemochromatosis. Hemochromatosis conferred resistance to the bubonic plague. Bubonic plague uniquely attacked the macrophages in people's bodies, which is pretty smart because they store iron. So the bacteria would get in there and whoa, divide out of control, tons of iron. That's why their lymph nodes would swell up and burst. They would just explode from the inside. But people that have hemochromatosis, they are storing iron in all their organs since they have a mutation, which means eventually they would rust to death and die, but they would survive bubonic plague. That's why they were able to pass on that gene, and that's why the gene for hemochromatosis persists in our gene pool. Kidneys. Kidneys are in the left and right upper abdominal quadrants. They are going to make a hormone called erythropoietin. Erythropoietin, along with B12, binds to the stem cell to cause erythropoiesis. It stimulates erythropoiesis. And what stimulates production of erythropoietin is a transcription factor called hypoxia-inducible factor. It simply turns on when oxygen is low. When oxygen is low in the blood, it turns on, and it makes your kidneys make EPO. Over in the liver, it makes it block hepcidin to free up iron in the blood, right? And then the kidneys, then in your small intestine, it's going to be absorbing 3 so-called ingredients to make a red blood cell. It's going to need folic acid, which is used to eject the nucleus in our erythrocyte. You don't want a nucleus. They're very, they use up a lot of energy, and so we want to just get rid of it. That way, the red blood cells are just carrying the oxygen. They're not using any of it for cellular metabolism, right? Or cellular respiration. We need folic acid, we need iron to make the hemoglobin, and your small intestines also absorb B12. And remember, in order to absorb B12, you need intrinsic factor, which means you need protein. So you're going to see a lack of that potentially in your vegetarian, vegan patients. So that's something to be aware of. Small intestine, and then the bone marrow. Okay, so that's erythropoiesis. Heart anatomy, the main thing to know about heart anatomy. The way that you are going to tell the left and right sides, the left side is going to be much larger, longer, thicker walls because it needs to make create the force to pump the blood out to the whole body. The right side is going to be a lot smaller, shorter. It's also going to have thinner walls. The walls of the heart, the outside is a pericardium. On top of the muscle is epicardium. Remember, it's like epidermis is on top of the dermis. The epicardium is on top of the muscle. The muscle is the myocardium. So that's going to be the part that actually contracts and contains the actin and myosin fibers. And the inside is the endocardium, and that's going to be the innermost layer of the heart. Dividing the left and right sides is a septum. The septum separates oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. There's also valves, and the valves are going to keep the blood flowing in one direction and prevent backflow. Remember, the bicuspid mitral valve is on the left side, and the tricuspid is on the right side. You can remember that because lab rat, left atrium bicuspid, right atrium tricuspid. The other things are blood comes in the vena cava into the right atrium. The vena cava, so that would be unoxygenated. Also, the pulmonary artery that takes it to the lungs is also going to be unoxygenated. Coming back in, that's going to be oxygenated, is the pulmonary vein, and then the aorta that takes it out to the whole body. Make sure you can go through the flow of the heart and every structure that it goes through, just like you did on your Flipgrid videos. All right. Did I cover everything that you wanted?